What's going on, guys? This is episode number 4. Actually, that might be me or something. We're hearing some feedback
Technical
issues.
difficulties.
Yeah. It's okay. We'll be fine.
That's not me.
Okay. I don't know.
I'm not hearing anything on my end.
All right, that's fine. Okay, what's going on, everybody? This is episode number 4 of the Don't Follow Me Home podcast, and we're missing 2 Corys today, both of them. So we have Megan and Amber with us, and I'm Justin, of course. Like you really care. Hey, what's up? First things first, Amber. I want to talk about this real quick. What's your God, something's wrong with this headphones. Sorry. I just wanted to ask you how your quarantine's going. What have you been doing?
What have I been doing? Well, quarantine sucks. Being stuck at home alone all day definitely sucks. Because Devin still is working out of the house, and during the week I'm still working, so I'm working from home, which definitely helps, and I'm grateful for that because I think I'd gone crazy if I didn't have something to do like work during the day. But I mean, other than that, I've been going for walks pretty much every day, unless what was it, Thursday, when it was randomly snowing and then hailing and raining. I definitely did not go outside that day. But yeah, walks, and I'm doing mini workouts downstairs and trying to see if we can find a dog that we want to put in adoption applications for. And I'm rereading Harry Potter, which I guess is kind of perfect for talking about witchcraft today. Rewatching The Simpsons from the very beginning on Disney Plus.
Nice. Yeah, I was just curious because I haven't seen Human Faces in a long time.
Nope. So. I mean, you and Megan see each other, me and Devin see each other, but that's, I mean, it's nice to see them, right? But it's I miss you guys so much.
I know it's kind of weird, but oh well.
How are you guys doing?
We're doing okay.
Bored.
Yep.
We still both work out in the public, so it's not really changed. We just, I don't know. I feel like after this is over, there's just gonna be like the best house parties ever.
Yep.
Yeah.
No, I think so too.
Anyway. All right, so whoops. No. Is it still recording? Okay, sweet. Anyway, this episode we're gonna talk all about witchcraft. Just I guess that stuff. Salem Witch Trials.
Oh, yeah.
We're gonna touch on that. Yep. Megan did a lot of research.
Awesome.
And so she's got 3 pages of notes here.
Nice.
So I don't know who wants to start. Megan, do you want to start?
I don't care.
You can just talk about things that we that you looked at, and I tried reading them last night, but then the first line, I was like, oh my God, that's so cool. And then I'm like, wait, I'm not going to read anymore because I want to be surprised. So I have no idea.
Okay.
So, I mean, I know, Amber, you know a lot of witchcraft stuff too, so feel free to chime in anytime.
For real,
pets.
We're stuck in a candlelit room again, so it's hard to read.
Oh no.
It's not hard for me to read. It's hard for him.
Oh, okay. I'll just listen.
Because he can't see in the dark.
What type of research did you do about witchcraft in general, or just the Salem Witch Trials?
Both.
Both. Okay.
I did the history of witchcraft.
So, what kind of history did you find?
That it all kind of leads back to Christians and how they perceive witches to be evil beings, whereas they were actually just natural healers, but people believe them to be doing devil's work. The earliest record of witches was written in the Bible, Bible between 1931 BC and 721 BC. That was a long time ago.
Yeah. Holy cow.
There's a story of King Saul. It didn't go into detail of who that was, but he was seeking out the witch of Endor to summon the dead prophet Samuel's spirit to defeat the Philistine army. Philistine. Well, this was back in 1900 BC. I don't know how to pronounce it.
Sure.
But in the Old Testament, Exodus 22:18, it states, "Thou shalt not suffer a witch to live," which is kind of creepy that they had that all the way back then, considering where we are now in life. It looks like what I found were mid-1400s is when witch hunts began to take off in Europe. Many of the accused witches confessed under torture. Executions were usually burning at the stake or hanging or being pressed to death. A lot of the people that were singled out were single women, widows, and just the odd ones out.
We've made some progress.
A little bit, yeah.
Not much, but
no, we're getting there though. Between the years of 1500 and 1660, up to 80,000 people were suspected witches, and that's how many were killed. So there was actually a book written, a guide on how to identify witches and how to hunt them and interrogate them. It's called Malleus Maleficarum, which translates into the Hammer of Witches. Yes, it was Protestants and Catholics trying to flush out witches. So this was how they got their information out for people to go and hunt witches and interrogate them and accuse them, which is kind of creepy for them to write a book about it.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then it just kind of switches gears into the Salem Witch Trials, which started in 1692 in the New World. So Salem, Massachusetts, if people don't know where that took place.
And then I don't know. We can touch on the Salem Witch Trials a little bit later.
Sure. That's fine.
Just so we can start talking about actual witches and stuff.
Yeah.
Hey, Amber, I got a question because you're pretty smart about this stuff.
Thank you.
Well, I don't know. I think you read a lot of books or something. You know? But like
book learning.
Is witchcraft? Is that like where like seances started? Or what is a seance exactly? We could talk about seances this episode too. Yeah. I don't really care. I just don't really know.
So when we play the Ouija board, that in a way is a form of a seance. So a seance is basically having a medium or a sensitive calling on a dead person to speak through them to other people who are in the room that are wanting to talk to someone who's passed away.
Oh, so it's not necessarily witch related.
Not necessarily, but definitely back in the 1400s, if someone was doing that, clearly you're possessed by the devil, so let's stone you to death or hang you or just kill you, because that's not Christian-like, right?
Right.
Yeah.
I read about stoning too. That doesn't sound like a pleasant experience.
Or being pressed to death.
Yeah.
Oh God.
Yes.
Yeah. The picture of the head, like the guy leaning over like a brick or whatever, and then an elephant was stepping on his head.
Mm-hmm. That sounds pretty painful.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You'll probably die, but
just a little bit.
Right. I don't know if they'll be able to bring you back.
Right.
It looks like the crime of witchcraft would be comparable to a felony these days.
Interesting.
But also punishable by death.
So, okay. Mm-hmm. Do we know what exactly witch practices are? Because, they portray in movies that they're like almost like superhero powers and stuff.
Yeah. No. So, I mean, Megan, I don't know if you found it in your research, but I also looked up some stuff too, and essentially all that it's ever really been, yes, they label themselves kind of magic makers, and again, I'm doing the air quotes, like you guys and anyone listening can see that, but
Sure.
it's witches or warlocks or what we would call like Wiccans today, right? They're people who use folklore, they use nature, an old and very deeply felt superstition to practice, to change or influence events. So it's not necessarily like, when we watch Charmed, for example. I mean, who knows? Maybe some people can do some of that stuff, and I'm sure we'll talk about our beliefs and everything too. But for the most part, it's all about using nature to invoke something or change a set of events or influence things. And there are, spells and casters and little, I'm the only word I can think of, incantations that you would say, to help influence those things with different tools that they might have.
Interesting.
Mm-hmm.
Interesting. So
that's why they were thought to be like natural healers.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
So
and I know you.
Sorry, go ahead.
Justin.
No, please go ahead.
Oh, I was just gonna say that one thing I learned when I was in Salem is some of like how witchcraft came to be seen the way movies portrayed it started with exactly like what Megan said, is they were just natural healers. So a lot of them were midwives who would use things from the earth for pain and both mental and physical pain during like childbirth and stuff. And that again, Christianity, that wasn't their practice, that wasn't their belief. And when they saw that it was working or it didn't work, right?
Mm-hmm.
Well, clearly you practiced some sort of black magic to kill my wife because you wanted A, B, or C. Or this worked, but this isn't our normal, so you must be a witch.
It's in a way, it's almost like it's nowadays too, with like the like the spiritual healers like overseas and stuff. They're like totally blacklisted by like big pharma and stuff over here.
Yeah. Yep.
But I had a witch, like odd witch trivia thing or something like that.
Ooh.
Well, yeah, but it's not on my phone anymore, so don't get too excited. But there was an interesting fact about how witches were portrayed to be able to fly on their brooms, and it had something to do with like they would rub something all over their body that like gave them this high, and then if they felt like they were flying.
What?
Yeah, and there was like they would rub this herbs or whatever it was, probably everything that they did with their natural healing and stuff, but they would like rub it on their area and stuff, and they had the sensation that they were flying. I guess that's where it came from.
Interesting.
I mean, that would make sense.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, because I mean, there's theories out there that only see like a heaven, or like the whole Bible thing existed because everybody was tripping out on like mushrooms and stuff.
Yeah, I would agree with that.
Interesting. I mean, it's fair because there are like topical, ointments. I mean, look at like CBD oil now.
Mm-hmm.
It influences the way that whatever area you rub that on feels. So
Right.
I only imagine how fresh everything was back in the 1400s if they had something like that. And yeah, they could absolutely, I could see how that would influence that feeling and then start that myth of, oh, well, she's a witch, so she flies on a broom.
Yeah. I don't know. It's not like the Well, I guess that's why in like Hocus Pocus, where she's able to fly on a vacuum cleaner
Yeah,
Because she's just
that's
high.
because she's just high.
yeah.
She's
They're all
high
just
on witch life, man.
yeah, tripping balls.
That's right. Amber, you know a lot about the Salem Witch Trials, right?
A decent amount,
Okay.
mostly from what I really learned on some of our tours, so I can absolutely chime in with Megan with her notes.
Okay, yeah, you guys can battle back and forth. I'm just gonna sit off to the side because I know nothing about this.
You know that they
Oh,
happened.
I do know they happened. Yes,
that's good. That's a
Yeah.
good first start.
Step 1.
Step
Yes.
one.
Yes.
What'd you find, Megan?
That they took place in 1692 and went until just 1693. They began when a 9-year-old and 11-year-old were suffering fits, body contortions, and uncontrolled screaming, and it was blamed on witchcraft and why that was happening and everything. But to go back to Justin's point of why the witches thought they were flying, was it was thought that they were probably poisoned by a fungus that caused spasms and delusions.
Yeah. I
So
mean, that would be
that's
my first step to look at, but what do I know, right?
right in the 1600s.
It's probably mushrooms.
You're a
honestly.
witch, right? Yeah. That's just how it began, and
Mhm.
there was three women that were like, thought to be the witches, and they were Sarah Good. You probably remember more than I do. There's another Sarah, and then like a Tibula or something.
Tituba. She
Tituba.
was one of the house slaves.
Yes, and then she
Mhm.
actually confessed and said that the devil was speaking to her and
Mhm.
everything. Yeah, I
Mhm.
mean, that's mostly what I got. 200 people were accused, 20 were put to death. I
Mhm.
read that 6 men were among them and 2 dogs.
Oh, I didn't know the dog thing.
Yeah,
Wow.
I saw that somewhere. I
Poor
was
little
looking at
dogs.
I know. I'm like, really? You think a dog is a witch?
Jacob.
Like, right? I know. How dare you? Gosh. And then I found that the most popular way to test if you're a witch was the swimming test, which would mean that your arms and legs would be bound and you would be thrown into the water. And if you sank, you were innocent. If you float,
Yes.
you're a witch.
So you die either way, basically.
Right.
I don't get that logic.
No,
Well,
I
because
don't
they
either.
think that if you sink, then you're not doing anything witchcraft to save yourself, probably.
But don't
Yeah.
people float?
Yeah, because you have oxygen in your body. So yeah, you automatically would float. Yeah.
Right. That's what I'm saying. So like nobody would sink.
Right. So it's unless they put rocks in their bodies or sand, I don't know.
Right.
But I just thought that was pretty morbid.
Oh,
Let's
yeah.
completely like bound you so you can't do anything.
Yeah, they didn't really care about people's feelings back then.
No.
Mm-mm.
Yeah, it looks like towards the end, like in the 1693, the governor of Massachusetts' wife was accused, and that's when he put an end to it. He set forth to bring trials to an end.
Shocking,
Oh, look at
right?
that.
Ironic,
Yeah.
huh?
I know.
Yes.
It's ridiculous.
And that's when the public started turning away from trials too.
Yep.
They weren't interested anymore, because I'm sure everyone was just like, oh, well, you're a witch. Everyone's a witch.
Well, I really honestly wonder how long witchcraft would have been outlawed if that didn't happen. Like, how long would it have gone?
Well, it looked like a lot of laws were set in place to banish it, and then they were lifted, and then it was banished. So it seems like it went through, a couple, like 100 years or so of being allowed and not allowed. Yeah, I mean,
depends on your stance on it, or what?
Right? Like it says in 1702, the General Court declared trials to be unlawful. 1711, a bill passed restoring rights and good names to the accused, and $600 restitution to their heirs, because that's enough when your loved one gets killed.
Yeah.
Jeez.
And then
Well, and go
sorry,
ahead.
I was just going to say that 250 years after the trials started is when Massachusetts formally apologized for the trials.
Yes.
Wow.
Yeah.
And,
so it took that long.
And $600 in like 1700 is probably like $1 million.
Right.
That's fair. It was a good chunk of change. But
Yeah.
the really crappy thing about that portion, like the money portion is, so they needed to make money somehow for keeping all these people in prison, right? Because there's a pile of people that were accused and imprisoned that didn't necessarily be put to death, right? So in order for them to get out, they still had to pay their jail fee, which ended a lot of people becoming homeless because all they had was like their houses and their land.
Wow.
So yeah, oh, sorry, we accused you of being a witch, and you're no longer accused, but you need to pay up for your time spent in jail.
Here's the money
and now
we
they're homeless.
owe you. Right.
Right. Oh.
Yeah. I think I read that the youngest accused was like a 4-year-old girl.
Wow.
Yeah, she wasn't put to death though. She was just in jail for 8 months.
She was spared.
Yeah.
I hope she was a witch.
Oh yeah, she is one of the ghosts that they think they see at the old jail.
How old do they think she is?
A little 4-year-old. So the belief there is that because that's where she spent so much of her time, and there was like trauma, and she was never the same afterwards. Obviously, what child would be?
Right.
That when she died, her energy just reverted back to that state. That's what our tour guide was telling us, because they'll have people that are walking down that pathway or whatever, or they're on their tours, and people will see like a little girl peeking around the corner and then be gone, or they'll hear her giggling or crying, and that's the only record that they have of any possible reason for a little girl who looks to be around between the ages of 3 and 5.
Wow. Yeah. So tell us about your experience there, learning about the witch trials. When you went to Salem, was it like, could you like feel something in the air that like just made it different and spooky or something?
And was it placebo effect?
Oh yeah, that too.
Right? And that's a fair question actually, Megan, because like I've been obsessed with the witches. Okay, that's a really intense term, but I'm not obsessed, but I've been very interested in witchcraft and witches, and especially the Salem Witch Trials since, oh God, I want to say like 6th grade, so a very young age. So I've always wanted to go. So yes, it felt weird, but was that just my excitement and anticipation?
Probably a little of both.
Right, because as soon as we entered the city of Salem, like I felt like I'd done like a line of coke or something. Like my whole body was just shaking with excitement. Like I felt like a little chihuahua when they're cold, right? Just trembling. But there is I think the weirdest part for me, honestly, was when were on the different tours and going to like the graveyards and being inside the witch house and being inside, going through the tours of like I wouldn't recommend it. There's this tour where they do like a mini narrative of the Salem Witch Trials, and then you go on like a tour of witchcraft history. And yeah, it's cool, but it wasn't super impressive. Anyways, just being in those places, knowing what happened, it's very surreal and very heavy. Like you just don't. I didn't. I guess I shouldn't say you. But I didn't feel like I was ever fully alone necessarily. Like I did get that feeling of how these people aren't at rest. Like there's definitely some sort of energy or presence in this whole town, because it's not just the Salem Witch Trials that has a sordid history there. Like Salem itself, the tour guide told us, is basically cursed. Like there's so much other history that happened there between gangs and things being smuggled underground. So there's tons of people that died and were killed underground. So when you're walking the streets, he's like, you're walking over bodies on bodies on bodies anywhere you're walking.
God. Like, are they still like buried in there? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, because
Probably.
what they did is when, and I do not quote me on any of the time frame because this is the only time I ever heard it was on this tour, but they had tunnels underground at some point in like the late 17, early 1800s where pirates and like just not good people would smuggle things in and out of the town. So they finally were able to barricade those up, right, block them off, and then they just built streets over those tunnels, and there are just dead bodies all over in those tunnels.
Yikes.
Yeah. And there's like three graveyards, three different graveyards. And they have the memorial for the people who were put to death. And that memorial is like no one's talking when they're walking around it. It's just very solemn, very, again, heavy is the only word that comes to my mind.
That's kind of what we felt in the Colosseum in Italy.
Yeah. Because we felt that in the Colosseum, and then when we went to the Sistine Chapel, they told us we couldn't talk. So
right. So it was a little different, like from being told you can't talk, but also like in the Colosseum, it's so big, and you just would think that people would just be chatting and talking and everything, but it was almost silent.
Yeah.
People were whispering, even the tour guides were.
Yeah.
Like after all those like barbarians and stuff, they actually tried to make it into like a community, and they had like apartments and stuff.
No.
Yeah.
It didn't work.
Yeah.
Yeah. So there's this one graveyard there that even Devin said he felt weird walking around. It's where Giles Corey is supposed to be buried. Megan, did you come up on his name at all?
No.
Okay. So he's the man who was pressed to death during the Salem Witch Trials.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I remember reading his name.
Yeah, Justin read about that part.
Oh, this poor guy. So he wasn't a pleasant man in life, but he by no means deserved to be accused of witchcraft and pressed to death. So he kept refusing to admit to witchcraft. And they told him at one point, if you don't tell us the truth, this is what's going to happen. And he was like, okay, because I'm not guilty.
Yeah, because he was pretty much he was like, well, I'm not going to admit to something that I'm that's pretty much what it was.
Yep.
And if you're going to get pressed regardless,
yeah, might as well go out with your morals,
dignity.
I think what it was they were saying they were going to press the truth out of him. And by the end, it wasn't like a one day we're done thing. It went on for days. And his last several words, instead of, they'd say, well, do you have something to tell us finally? And he just kept saying, more weight. Wow. And the graveyard he's supposed to be buried in, because his whereabouts are kind of unknown, they see his ghost, and there's this whole theory, if you will, haunting theory, that if you see him, something bad's going to happen to you because he holds a curse over the town. So we went in that graveyard, and I'm like looking around, and it's the middle of the day.
You're trying to find him.
Yes, I wanted to be cursed, see what happens.
See what follows you back.
And kind of like you said about the Colosseum with, no, don't follow me home. Sorry, I just caught that. Like people tried to make, apartments and stuff there. Well, there's houses where there's windows, literally you could jump out of your window and roll into this graveyard.
Nope.
And like, I could not imagine knowing that curse is supposedly there, and that if you see him and your window's looking right out into the area where he roams around, no thank you. Like, but yeah, even Devin said he felt very odd in that graveyard. Like there was one other couple walking around, but even after they left, he's like, I just didn't feel like we were necessarily alone.
Can't imagine why.
Right.
I mean, even like, so the town of Salem is still like lived in.
Yeah.
Obviously.
Oh, yeah.
Yes.
Yep.
Do they just basically live off of like tourists? Is majority of the people there tourists? Like,
oh yeah, there's a lot of, I mean, for sure, tourism is definitely helpful, I'm sure, but they've got, I mean, they also live off of being a witch community still. So
okay.
Crowhaven Corner that I mentioned last episode, they're the oldest witch shop in Salem, and that, like, you could get all kinds of, most of what you can think of that you would need for witchcraft there, like your tarot cards, your crystals, your pendulums,
Cool.
different
So
types of candles.
they like practice it there.
Oh yeah,
it's like
yeah.
a way of life and everything. Well, because I can just imagine that like living there would just be, unless you were like a firm believer, like you wouldn't want to live there even,
Yeah.
Right.
Like the grumpy old couple down the street. Ah!
Right.
Yeah. No, I think everyone there takes this stuff very seriously. Like, I didn't see any shops that gave off like the hokey, silly pointed witch hat type of souvenirs. Everything, if you were going to get a souvenir there, it was all very, very authentic. Very, we take this seriously. This is our way of life. Everyone who worked in any of the witch shops I went into, they were really, really friendly. Any questions you had, they answered them just like how Megan, you would answer a question about baking, or Justin, you would answer a question about music, or I would answer a question about therapy. Just very, yep, this is what it is, and this is what it does, and
cool. I mean, that's just fascinating to me because, like, you go up to Duluth and you can tell it's just a touristy area that people work there and they know, like, oh, yeah, all the tourists are coming and this and that. Or when we were in Washington and this one shop had all this Bigfoot like souvenir and everything.
Oh, sure.
That place was awesome.
It was cool, but the guy admitted that they accidentally got a box of the stuff and it took off, so they just kept it.
Oh my god. I love that he admitted that.
Right. Well, because Justin's like, do you really have like sightings of him? And they're like, nah.
That's so funny.
So, I mean, to like have a city that actually takes these things seriously is really kind of fascinating and just like amazing in itself, that even all of the like citizens that live there take it seriously and they're like, this is our way of life, like we are the city of witchcraft. Like
it honestly kind of reminds me of Hocus Pocus,
right,
where they all took it seriously except for Max Dennis.
Moron.
Hollywood.
He's a little leaguer.
Yeah. I saw the Allison's house when we were there too.
Allison?
Yeah.
Nice. Kiss me, I'm Allison.
Hey, fun fact.
Yabos?
Did you know Thora Birch's parents were porn stars?
I did not know that.
Yep, look it up.
Thora Birch plays Danny.
Yeah.
Yes, in case anyone's wondering where that came from.
Yes.
It's not completely random.
Right.
No, yeah, it was just very, again, it wasn't like, oh, this whole town is haunted or what, I didn't get that vibe. Every single step I take, there's a ghost behind me, but there were very certain areas, like the witch house, that is where one of the judges lived, and it is still completely the way it was back when all of this was going on. And there are artifacts from when he lived there that are in cases, for protection, obviously, because they're freaking old AF.
Right. Just a little.
Yeah. And again, even Devin, so people listening, you'll hear me reference this because we all know Devin's a huge skeptic. So for him to say things like this, it's kind of a big deal. He even said, like, if any place was going to be haunted, this would be the place. Because it just, I don't know, it's so hard to explain if you haven't been there, but it gives off this feel of there's a lot of shit that went down in this house, and people who were doing terrible things to these innocent people lived there. And it's just this eerie, I'll post a picture when we promote this episode, but it's just this eerie black house just sitting on the corner of one of the main streets, and right across the street is, just an everyday shop. Like, it's
So is his house like a museum kind of thing?
Yep,
Cool.
it has the history of some of the the witch trials, a little bit of that, but mostly him and his family and the artifacts that they found in the house and were able to keep. There are logs, which I thought was amazing. So, like, journal entries that he had written, saved and kept from the witch trials, and they're near impossible to read. But
I was gonna say,
tried.
is it in English?
It's in English, but it's
faded and stuff.
Yeah, I'm sure.
Yeah.
And the writing back then was probably
Yeah.
just insane.
Not the greatest.
Right.
No.
I mean, do you know any like information on whether or not like the judges and people were ever sentenced to like, well, you did this, you were the reason why they died, and kind of like Nazis, like the guardsmen, the like Nazis were. Well, I didn't mean to.
No, I know, just kidding.
Put a damper on. I just, I'm curious if anybody was ever, held responsible.
No, this is definitely something they kind of tried to just, here's that $600 you were talking about, right? So
right,
there you
and
go.
then
Like, our formal apology 250 years later. So, and this is the really sad part. In our tour guide, because we did one of those ghost history night tours, he was very blunt. He's like, I don't believe in ghosts. I'm here to tell you history with some ghost stories. None of what I'm telling you has happened to me, but there are some from people who I really respect, which makes me believe them a little bit more. And he made a good point. Like, the three girls that started this all these people basically died because they were just bored. Like, the whole mold thing, yes, it's a theory, but that moldy weed thing wasn't really prominent in the area. So yeah, there's a chance it somehow got in their food, but it's very unlikely. And those three girls were hearing Tituba tell stories of her homeland and voodoo. And the belief is that they got bored, they took her stories, started talking about it amongst themselves and acting them out, essentially, which is where, like, the seizures, basically, because when you talk about it, it's a seizure, right? Basically a seizure that they're having. And then they didn't want to say that they were faking it, and then it just spun out of control. Only one of those girls ever apologized.
Wow. That's pretty intense, just because of boredom. It sounds like something that would happen these days, though.
Right.
Sadly.
Right now, especially.
Right.
Okay, so can you go back? Because I'm not familiar with the whole mossy food or whatever you were talking about. And
the fungus.
The fungus.
The fungus that Megan mentioned earlier.
Oh,
so
well, I probably wasn't listening.
You probably weren't.
No,
it was the two little girls that were like spasming and screaming, and that was like the first case of when they thought witchcraft started, but it's believed that they were just ingested fungus that caused spasms and delusions.
Oh, so I did hear that. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
You're just not paying attention.
I remember.
Yes.
Yeah.
So yeah, they just started it because they were bored.
Yeah. Yep. All of these people lost their lives and family members, and just terrible, terrible, terrible. And again, just coming from fear, right? That's basically what all of this is it's something stemmed from fear, because even if, let's say, 1 out of the 20 people that were put to death, let's say one of them was practicing some form of witchcraft, it was most likely that healing property, like Megan mentioned. I'm going to use natural herbs and natural remedies and maybe pray a different way than other people in the town are wanting me to pray, because they pray to the gods and goddesses of the earth, basically. Wiccans do.
Mm-hmm. Didn't I swear to God, like a couple weeks ago, Megan, you said that you wanted to start practicing that?
I've always been interested in Wicca. Mm-hmm.
Me too.
I've always been fascinated with it.
What exactly is that then? Can you fill me in? Or, because I'm not really sure.
It's natural practicing of...
Oh, that's it?
Yeah. Like,
Oh.
Amber, you could probably explain it better than I can.
So
you can
no,
explain
you're
it in
fine.
just in words.
Okay. So kind of what I just said, right? Think about like the natural healing. So using your herbs and natural remedies. But when it comes to the religion aspect, it isn't just one single god and I'm going to pray and my problems are gone, right? It's gods and goddesses of the earth. So, for example, I brought home some candles from that shop, right? And each of them has a little incantation that you say when you light it to help the purpose of the candle. You pray to a specific god or goddess, or not pray, but say the incantation to them. So I bought a healing candle, and it's made from different herbs that burn with the candle, and the incantation that you say is supposed to help kind of put that out there so that you get that healing agent. So they're very much about like the earth in general, and anything that we ask for, this kind of ties in with some myths of witchcraft, right? Is going to come back threefold. So like if you ask for anything good, yeah, something else might come with it, but if you ask for something bad, like someone to get hurt or something bad to happen to someone else, that's going to come back at you too.
Mm-hmm.
It's like karma.
Kind of, yeah. Yep.
Yeah, so like it's like its own religion, but it's not like one of the religious religions like
Sweet.
Christianity and like Catholic and you know, that kind of stuff.
Right. And it does play into the whole, seance and tarot reading and that sort of thing as well. Whereas obviously with like Christianity or Catholicism, they don't want you to do that usually. So they don't see those things as tools of the devil. It's simply a different way to communicate with people who are no longer with us.
Which is ironic since witchcraft was deemed bad by Christians.
Uh-huh. Yep.
Let's not go down that hole.
I know. We have our own beliefs.
Yes.
Yeah. Did you do anything else in Salem that you haven't touched on that's pretty interesting, or?
We ate a lot of really good food.
Sweet.
No, I learned a lot more about the Wicca side of things and just the Salem Witch Trials in general. Like, there's so much more information that they obviously have in Salem than you'll read in any books. Because this, like Megan said, right, it's their livelihood, it's their everyday life. I honestly recommend going. You can walk the whole town in multiple times in an afternoon because it's a lot smaller, but also not so small that it feels small. I don't know how to explain it.
Right.
There's a lot to see, a lot to do, but yet you can get everywhere by foot, so you don't need to drive around or anything, which I think is always nice when you're trying to find places that you've never been.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, definitely.
Just kind of exploring.
I mean, I feel like I knew a little more. I think I knew it, I knew some stuff about the Salem Witch Trial, but I never knew that it was such a short amount of time.
Right. It feels like it goes on forever when you think about
years.
It. Yeah.
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 And it was only 6 or 8 months?
Mm-hmm.
Maybe a year.
I know. It doesn't. It's so weird. That's weird to me too.
Right.
And the whole burning at the stake thing wasn't as huge over here in America as people think it was. That was more overseas.
Right. And
that was
the
happening.
UK. Yeah.
Yeah.
Which is just fascinating because it's people that make movies, where are they getting their facts from?
That's a fun fact I actually learned. So how how we picture witches as green green monsters with like the moles or whatever.
That's
So
just one. That's just one witch, I think.
Anyway.
Anyways, up until then, there wasn't that depiction of witches really. And the only reason that we have that green witch thought that pops up in our head because of Wizard of Oz is because that's when Technicolor became big. And green is the color they chose to really make it pop on screen.
Oh.
Yeah, because it's ugly.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
I love green. But anyway.
Not that green.
No, that's a lot of green.
Yeah.
But I was like, oh my gosh, I had no idea. And ever since that movie, the media has, I mean, I think we're getting better, obviously, but there's always room for improvement. The media has portrayed more of that haggard, I don't know what word I'm looking for here, but like that, you know, the nasty hair and the bad skin and the old, creepy, cackly lady.
Right. Until movies like Halloween Town or The Craft came out, and then you see that they're normal, just human beings.
Just badass bitches.
Right.
Yep.
Which kind of leads me, I mean, Justin, I'm curious, what do you think of witchcraft? Like when you think about everything we've talked about and what it really means to be a witch or to be Wiccan, whichever term you want to use, do you think that there is actual stuff behind it where, yeah, you say these incantations and you do these spells and it's going to work?
Well, see, I kind of feel it. I kind of see it as, because like I was saying before, I don't believe they have any superpowers or anything like that.
Okay.
But I kind of see it in like a form of voodoo type thing. But like, I don't even know if that stuff works. I mean, witchcraft is very fascinating, but like, I don't know if any of this, because like, I don't technically know what they practice and stuff. So like, I'm coming in here not really knowing a lot about witches, just everything that they've shown in movies. So I mean, I don't know. We might have talked about it already, but what are like their spells and stuff? Do they actually believe that something's going to happen, like voodoo related to something?
So
yes.
I think, yeah. So for example, right, like I have the incantation here that goes with my candle that I need to order a new one when all this quarantine stuff blows over.
Is an incantation kind of like a spell that you just say? Okay.
Yep. So the healing candle that I bought is this really pretty blue, and I have no idea what herbs are in it, but it smelled amazing. And it's literally you light it for purposes of healing. And as you're lighting it, it says, find a place to relax. And as you light it, speak these words. I call on the goddess Bridget that she may bring healing to me and those who I love. Let all who I touch be healed of body, mind, and spirit. So mote it be. So every time and it says to let it burn for at least an hour. Every time you light it, you say that spell, and it's supposed to put that out there to that specific goddess, and she brings that healing upon you and your loved ones. So same thing, there's like success candles, there's money candles, there's sex candles and love candles.
Or the pet blessing one that you gave me.
Yeah,
the 3 of them, which I haven't used yet because if I start using them, then they melt.
I know.
And they go away.
I know.
Okay, so did witches get like a bad rap after the Salem Witch Trials?
I think
probably.
Just always, I mean, yeah, it didn't help, but which is dumb in my opinion because it should have been the people that were just killing them off.
Right.
Because from what you guys are telling me, it just seems like it's just a practice of in their own minds of
nature.
Yeah.
And natural. Exactly. Yeah. Well, it's just like a stigma. It's just like a stereotype. You think of a witch, you think of like an evil, like devil worshiper trying to help the devil kind of deal. And so they have this bad stigma that is attached to them, that they're doing the devil's work and they're evil.
Right.
So you can't understand what they're saying because it's in another, like different practices are like different languages, so you don't always know what they're saying.
So is that after the Salem Witch Trials, or is that after Wizard of Oz? Do we know like how they got to be so creepy and like
after Wizard of Oz? That's when that creepy image. So like the 1930s, whenever Wizard of Oz was.
Right.
Yeah.
So the Wizard of Oz
that image.
Right.
Yeah.
They probably fed off of, the witchcraft and witches from history.
So they literally just concocted something for Hollywood.
Right.
Yep. And I mean, that's not to say, it's just like with any practice, right? Whatever type of spiritual or religious practice, there are, spells that are meant to hurt people. Like one of the witch shops that I went into had a very dark section and I think we'll talk about voodoo in a different episode, it seems like, because I can't believe we're already at almost an hour. That's
I know,
going by really fast. Cool. But, that had voodoo dolls for harmful purposes, which I found a whole bunch of stuff on that, which I won't talk about right now, but it definitely had a dark section for wanting to gain something or hurt someone. So for example, they obviously had a candle section like every store there, but they had candles that had two people intertwined, which was meant for like to improve your sex life. But then they also had a very large penis candle that was black and
shocking.
Sorry. This is really unprofessional of me to laugh at that. But that candle had an incantation to harm the other person's libido. So you're lighting it and you say a spell with that person's name in it, and it's supposed to hurt their sex life. So basically make like their penis flaccid.
Oh shit.
Which would suck for, so there's, I mean, yes, I think that witchcraft has been given a terrible name because I don't think there's that many people out there that are doing it, that actually are practicing it and believe in it and doing it for harmful purposes. But there are, like, I thought there's some stuff and I was like, oh, well, that's kind of startling. I'm going to walk the opposite direction of this stuff.
Yeah, that's crazy. Stupid question, but I've been kind of curious about this for the last hour. I want to know each of yours favorite witch in any movie.
That's a hard one.
It is a hard one. I know
That's
mine.
A hard one.
You go first then.
Mine's, I don't know her name, but
can't be your favorite then.
No.
Is it Alyssa Milano from Charmed?
No.
Okay.
I do like Alyssa Milano though. No, it's the little old lady from Teen Witch.
Really?
Yeah. She's funny.
Oh my gosh.
I haven't seen that movie in a long time. Holy cow.
Yeah. We always do the rap. I'm hot and you're not. If you want to get me. God, that's so good.
I love Piper from Charmed. Like the original Charmed. 90s Charmed. I love her so much. I relate to her and I love her freezing power, and eventually when she starts being able to like blow things up.
Nice. Gosh, it's so hard to choose.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I just kind of dropped the ball. I don't know. I was just curious.
Well, your favorite is very random.
Well, sure. That's a great movie.
It is a good movie.
Is it Glinda?
Gosh. No, I would not say it's Glinda.
She's beautiful.
I mean, the first one that popped in my head was actually Maggie, the grandma from Halloween.
Oh yeah.
Oh, I love her.
I know.
Isn't she Princess Leia's mom or something?
Yeah. Yes.
In real life?
Yeah. Debbie Reynolds.
Yeah,
they died like months apart from each other.
Yeah, that's kind of...
May they rest in peace. It's because she was a witch. Mm-hmm. She was able to control that. But I don't know. I just, I always liked her, and I liked her free spirit and taking pride in the fact that she was a witch. And
she's a very, I know she was a grandma, but she's a very grandma.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, she is.
Where she
Yeah.
took,
And
she looked after. She wanted everything, the kids
Yeah.
to just,
Yeah.
And I think too, the way Megan you described her is kind of what Wiccans, because that's what witchcraft is referred to, especially these days, right? As Wicca.
Right.
Everything that they really want to embody is just that free spirit, that hopefulness, that goodness, essentially.
Mm-hmm. I mean, that's how I view witches for the most part. It's just like a free spirit. And maybe that's why I feel like I can connect with them.
It means you think you're a witch.
I could be.
You think you're a witch. You think you're a mermaid. You think you're a unicorn.
No, my alter ego's a fairy. Thank you.
No, I've wanted to be a witch since like 6th grade. I used to try and make spells with flowers and water in my mom's cooking bowls.
Yeah, how'd that
obviously go? It didn't go well at all. Not at all. I used to try and pretend like I could control the weather.
Right.
It's just, I don't know. I've always felt like I connected with that stuff, and I wish that I didn't, as Justin's laughing at me.
Well, no.
No, there's something to laugh about, Justin.
No, I was laughing because Hocus Pocus line just went in my head, but continue.
Oh, okay. I don't know, Amber. I did the same stuff, like back in elementary school. Like during recess, me and like friends would go into like the wooded areas and play witches and like find like a hollowed out tree stump and like put like sticks and stuff in there, and it was really cool. Katie Newberger, shout out.
Yeah. I saw her too.
I know.
Besties. Yeah. So I mean,
I don't know. I was just thinking of the line where they go to the what's his face's house, and then they're all like hanging out because he's the devil.
Oh,
and then he goes, "They call me master."
Wait till you see what I'm gonna call you.
Oh God, that's brilliant. That's good stuff.
Gosh, it's a good one.
I could watch that movie probably every day,
all year round.
Fine. Yep. No, that's another thing in Salem. They have a whole Hocus Pocus tour where they take you on stops where they filmed the movie.
That's really cool.
Mm-hmm.
What places are actually on location in the movie?
So Allison's house and the town hall where they had the big adult Halloween party, for sure. And I think I read that Max and Danny's house is too.
Really?
And some of the graveyards. But our tour guide wasn't a fan of Hocus Pocus, so he didn't talk about it a ton, so I was sad.
Wow, what a loser.
I know.
Just because he's not a fan.
He should get in a different line of work then.
Right. If he doesn't believe in ghosts either.
Well, the one story he told, he actually, like, he does believe, because he said he's really good friends with the bartender that works at the bar that this happened at, but the upstairs, so it's kind of like Anoka. A lot of the little downtown bars and restaurants have apartments in the upstairs, and the bar was closing, and one of the bartenders had gone to like clean up, and all of the chairs were flipped up on the table when he came back.
Oh, that's...
And people will see a figure of a woman in the upstairs, like where the apartment area would be, just looking out the window, just there and then gone.
Oh my
and
God.
He said that he really trusts this specific bartender, and he's not one who like just makes crap up just for shits and giggles, and he's kind of a skeptic too, so he like was like, okay, that's a little much. That's a little creepy.
Yeah.
Right. I was so I listened to the sports radio station here. And they don't really ever talk about sports, so it's kind of cool.
Oh.
But like I was listening, and then one of the dudes had a really good point. He's like, because one person on the show doesn't believe in any ghosts or any spirits or anything like that, but everybody else has had experiences or something like that. But then he's like, regardless if you believe them or not, like, you can tell when you're looking at a person's eyes if they've believed that they've seen it.
Interesting.
So, like, you can tell when, because, like, all of these people around him, you know, you could tell if they were just kind of like being fictitious or like, oh, I'm not sure what I actually saw. But everybody, when they spoke to him about it, they all had that, like, yeah, I was terrified of my eyes, you know.
Mm-hmm.
Huh.
And that's a interesting way to look at it, because, like, you can actually tell if, I mean, and I'm sure some scenarios are not necessarily paranormal or anything, but they think that it's paranormal, but it still scares them, you know.
Right.
Well, I mean, what do they say? The eyes are
they're the biggest
windows
giveaway.
to the soul.
Right, windows to the soul.
Oh, so
and the giveaway too. I mean, yeah, you can tell by somebody like looking at their eyes if they're like lying, and you can totally tell their signs. So I believe that.
Yeah,
it's interesting.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know.
I mean, so what do you want to read that email? Are you guys having fun? You guys want to keep going for a little bit?
I don't care.
What other questions do you have about witchcraft, I guess?
That's a good point.
Comments.
I don't really know. That's
How about you, Megan?
I mean, I'm pretty good.
Well, because I came in not really knowing anything, so like I just felt like I sat through like history class or something, which is
nice.
great. No, it was great because, I mean, I only knew witches from movies, which is probably stupid on my part. The fact that, like, kind of like ignorant about it.
I wouldn't say it's stupid.
Yeah, but like,
I mean, you know what you know. Like, if you know that's how they're portrayed in movies and everything. If you don't have an interest in it, then why would you search for more answers?
I suppose, and I don't even know if they like teach this stuff in school. Like,
I remember vaguely learning about the witch trials, but it was very short.
That would be the only thing that they would touch on. That I'm sure, right?
Yeah, they probably don't even talk about it anymore. No. Honestly,
the trials.
Yeah.
I mean, they do. They're pretty open about it because it's such a huge.
No, like reason. In school. Sorry.
Oh, in school. Sorry.
Yeah.
Like in high school, like you learn about stuff. Like they hardly touch on it.
I wonder if they do in Massachusetts, though.
They probably do.
Yeah, I'm sure.
You know
like
what I mean?
Like in Hocus Pocus when they.
Yeah.
They talk about the Sanderson sisters and everything.
Yeah.
But I mean, I feel like if Salem themselves wouldn't even talk about the trials, then there's a red flag right there.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Like that's their history. That's who they are. You know, I always think about the Sabrina the Teenage Witch episode too, where they go and she's like scared to death they're gonna find out she's a real witch. And
yeah.
Also, the Boy Meets World episode where
your girlfriend's a witch.
Oh my god.
Oh, I love it.
He thinks you're a witch. That's because I am. Candace Camembert, whatever your name is.
Cameron. Candace Cameron, not Candace Cameron.
I don't know what
DJ.
Did you? I do have another fact.
Yeah.
I saw this on. I think it was like one of those unbelievable facts or something on Facebook, where like witch windows are found almost exclusively in or near the U.S. state of Vermont. I didn't have to say U.S. state. I'm just reading off of something.
It's okay.
According to an old superstition, witches on broomsticks can't fly through angled windows. The reasoning behind this is that their broomsticks simply wouldn't fit.
I feel like I read this too, and that's fascinating.
So do you know what I'm talking about, Amber?
Yeah.
Like an angled window.
Like on like the point that the window is like goes up with the roof, kind of.
Yep.
That's something fascinating. That's like a superstitious type thing,
right?
Oh, absolutely.
Like, how did they come up with that?
That beer was strong enough whenever those started becoming a thing.
And it was
wow.
It was obviously Vermont, so obviously it was up in that area.
East Coast. Yep. Close enough.
Yep.
I've never been to the East Coast, but I bet like you can drive through 6 states in like 4 hours.
You certainly can. We drove
She
through.
did it.
Yeah, let's see here. Massachusetts, Rhode Island, New Jersey, New York, Pennsylvania.
Wow.
So Rhode Island we drove through in like an hour. Oh, and Connecticut.
Well,
there's 6.
That's insane because it takes what 2.5, 3 hours just to get up to Duluth.
Right.
I know.
And then you got another 3 hours to get to the Canadian border.
So insane.
Yep.
There's a ton of places that I want to go and that I think we could touch on this podcast too over there, because it's got such honestly haunted history over there. I mean, think about how old it is. Just Massachusetts alone. And then all of the surrounding states, like Gettysburg.
Oh God.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yikes.
Well, yeah. Should we read an email to end here?
Yeah. Do you have that email up?
Yeah. Nick.
Yeah.
Nick Jr.
So we have an email from Nick Johnson here, and he emailed in a few different experiences.
I think they're all kind of like in line with each other. Like I think they're in like a chronological order though, so like they all make sense after one another.
That's kind of what I got out of it too. I skimmed it, but all right. And it is a little bit longer, so if you guys want me to pause to like talk about something, just let me know.
Sure.
All right. So he says, hey, I recently started a YouTube channel that's focused on UFO hunting / sharing UFO stories. I had a few sightings in my late teenage years, and I always wanted to pursue it. I spent roughly $5,000 on a DSLR camera with a low light telephoto lens in hopes I can record something like I saw 15 years ago. I've had a few ghost experiences, however. I'm not as comfortable talking about them because even I started to question my own sanity. At least with UFOs, the government admitted to their existence. Smiley face. Anyway, I'll type out all my experiences and you're welcome to read / discuss them on your podcast. And I'd be willing to join you in a conversation too. However, I'd love to go on an actual hunt with y'all and bring my recording equipment. I'm an introvert and not much of a show host, but again, it's something I'm fascinated with. And after everything I've seen, the American dream seems rather pointless, and I'd rather spend my time doing something I think is more important. So, possible future guest star.
Sweet.
Yeah.
I'll try to give you the cookie cutter details without turning it into a novel, but it'll be a long email, so my apologies in advance. Roughly 15 years ago, at the age of 16 or 17, 2 friends and myself driving back to my house in Becker, Minnesota. On the main road driving through town, 23 Cross Sherburne Avenue. And he's doing these like bullet points. Oh,
No, I'm just kidding.
Oh, I was like, what? He's doing these in like bullet points, so that's how I'm reading them. Front passenger and myself, back passenger, staring off to the west, which is our right side. We saw a low, slow flying plane. The front passenger verbally acknowledged how it was odd to see a plane at that altitude and speed. The plane started to slow down, which is practically impossible for the slow speed it was already going. The plane stopped. We yelled at the driver to turn around and drive back to where it had stopped. The driver turned around and drove to it. It was hovering over a dirt parking lot that had a couple baseball and soccer fields. It was just over tree height, and we stopped roughly 50 yards away from it. We sat and watched for what seemed like minutes, probably only 30 seconds. The driver, not knowing what to do, turned his headlights off. The plane, and he's saying plane now in quotes, the plane turned and looked at us immediately and then turned to face away from us. It then shot off to our left instantly and stopping on a dime only to shoot off back to where it was originally. It danced back and forth a few times. There was no acceleration or deceleration time. It just went insanely fast and stopped instantly, without kicking up dust or making noticeable noise. It jetted off to the south, directly away from us, and was out of sight within a second or two. It appeared to go into space, or at least very high altitude. I couldn't really make out a shape, but if I had to guess, it was round, mostly just a bright white light. That ship blew our minds. It defied physics as far as I'm concerned, and definitely well beyond our technical knowledge. Okay, that's pause there. Any thoughts on that?
Um, UFOs and stuff is kind of like a strange situation. Um, I mean, we can do a episode about that too, but it's just like to preface the rest of his story, I like that he's kind of like self-aware about
Yeah,
like
me too.
I'm not really sure like because like people you go to like Montana or something and they talk about Bigfoot sightings and stuff, they're just like, oh yeah, I'm the only one that saw it. And I'm like, oh,
Yeah.
they talk about like how crazy their experience was or whatever when you have no idea what they saw. They just 100% positive. He's like, I like that he's like,
Questioning.
yeah, he's like,
Yep.
it was a strange flying thing, but like he doesn't necessarily he's not gonna call it a flying saucer or whatever.
Right. Um, so then he goes on and he says, after I saw that, I was more open-minded to pretty much everything. I started driving around after work, hoping I would see it again. I figured it stopped there for a reason, so maybe it would come back. I never did see anything that exciting again. However, I did see another low, slow-flying plane that seemed to be flying on the same path into town. I got a good look at the bottom of it, and it was round but didn't defy physics or conventional technology. The last UFO I saw was flying over Big Lake. Ooh, yep. Going to going north to south. This one was flying much higher than the previous two, and it flew directly over me while I was driving. Okay, pause. That would freak me out. It was a very distinct V shape with 5 round glowing lights on the bottom. Again, didn't defy physics or conventional technology, but it certainly wasn't a B-2 jet. All 3 of those crafts were within a 10-mile radius and all around 10 p.m. The first one, I'm not exactly sure of the time actually. I think it was a little probably closer to 9. Anyway, after seeing 3 UFOs, I felt I had a connection to something. I actively prayed to the universe for knowledge, answers, guidance, etc. I thanked the universe for good things that happened and tried to find lessons for the bad things. I was happy, I was excited, I enjoyed life for the most part, similar to how Christians pray to God, I would imagine. A couple years after that, I was staying in a house with a few other people. I was sleeping and woke up suddenly, which isn't normal for me. My attention immediately directed towards my door. There was an old transparent man standing there looking at me. Okay, pause. This is just me. Yep, that was going to be my response, Megan. Okay, back to him. I looked around the room. I looked back at him and he was still there. I was sitting up in my bed at this point, and we just watched each other for a few moments. He slowly vanished, like the transparency dial on Photoshop or something. Just slowly got more and more transparent until he wasn't there. I thanked the universe and went back to sleep. The next morning, I decided it was probably a dream. I told no one. Someone else who was also staying in that house started to describe a similar event that took place in the basement laundry room. He described that man to me and also said he slowly vanished into thin air. Now, I'm thinking it couldn't have been a dream if someone else who was awake saw the exact same person. A couple nights later, I woke up suddenly, but this time my attention was directed towards the foot of my bed. There he was, peeking over the footrest of the bed.
God.
No. This
Well, I guess
time
I'm
he
not
scared
sleeping
the shit
tonight.
out of me. I was in fight or flight mode, too close for comfort. I looked around the room again, startled and scared. By the time I looked back to where he was, he had vanished. I didn't see him slowly fade this time. I think I scared him too. I was never a believer in ghosts. I was interested in UFOs. I disliked ghost hunting shows, but after staying in that house, I wouldn't have believed any of it myself if it weren't for that other person who also saw him. I would have continued to think it was a dream, 2 dreams even. However, with validation from another person, it made it real in my mind. Now, my last real experience is the most unbelievable. I question my own sanity after this. I have regrets about this night. Thinking about it makes my eyes water, and every time I've told this story, I basically cry. Typing this paragraph this far, and my eyes are watering, and I haven't even started to describe it. I will likely take a smoke break before I continue. If I had a purpose in life, I missed it here. If I was somehow special and meant to do something, this is where I threw it away. This is where whatever the universe was trying to teach me would have benefited someone else, and I looked the other way. If I could change one thing in my life, it would be this night. Buddy's graduation ceremony for an ALC school. I was sitting in the crowd near the front with this family, couple of friends. There were a bunch of speakers, very